Come on in to Margaret McSweeney's Kitchen for Kitchen Chat, where every week you'll meet chefs, cookbook authors, foodies, gourmets, and just plain people who love to eat. And along with laughter, chat, recipes, and stories about food, you'll sometimes also hear words of inspiration, love, and hope. As Margaret always says, Kitchen Chat is food for the senses and food for the soul. So grab a cup of coffee, put your feet up on a comfy chair, and get ready to spend a little time with Margaret and her friends.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Kitchen Chat. This is Margaret McSweeney, and I am just so thrilled that you've tuned in today to Kitchen Chat. Welcome back if this is your second time around, and welcome to you if you are new listeners. It's all about just having fun in the kitchen and discovering taste, discovering all things about food, and talking to these wonderful chefs and cookbook authors and just going on a culinary quest. And as you know, many of you know, I am not a very good home chef, but I love to eat, and I am just so excited about taking this journey with you. And so many of you have truly become friends in the process, and I so appreciate your emails, your tweets, your Facebook messages, and I'm so delighted we actually have a new way to connect, listeners. Now I have just launched the new Facebook for Kitchen Chat, and it's all one word, so please look me up on Kitchen Chat, and I can't wait to connect that way as well. Well, today we have quite a treat. I am just delighted to share the show with you today. We have a James Beard award-winning, his bio is 5 pages long, just truly an icon in the culinary world. I cannot wait for you to meet Chef Sanford, also known as Chef Sandy, and he's joining us from Milwaukee, and just a lot of exciting things going on there with his new book and new ventures in life. And then the second segment, we'll have a little kitchen chat with a master of tea. So this will be a fun show, and I just encourage you to grab a cup of coffee or a cup of tea and sit down and enjoy the kitchen chat. So first, I would like to introduce to you Chef Sanford D'Amato, also known as Chef Sandy. Welcome to Kitchen Chat.
Oh, good morning, Margaret. Thank you. Great to be here.
Oh, I'm so delighted that you're here, and I'm literally just sitting in my kitchen doing this podcast, and just so thrilled to have you on. And listeners, I want you to know all about Chef Sandy. I mean, this is truly an honor to have you on. He was one of the very first James Beard Award nominees in 1990 when it first came out, and along with, oh goodness, as we all know, listeners, Chef Charlie Trotter, who just passed away in Chicago, and the culinary world. Yes, we're just mourning, and my personal condolences to you, Chef Sandy. I'm sure that yes, it goes along. The ties are long.
Well, Charlie was a great, not only a great chef, but a great friend over the years. We actually met back in 1990 when, and before that, I received this telegram from the James Beard Foundation, and I had never even gotten a telegram before, and it said you've been nominated for Best Chef Midwest, and it had a number to call. So I called up the number and I asked, what do I have to buy? Because I figured it was, some sort of promotional thing or something. And the woman started laughing. She said, No. She said, you've been nominated as Best Chef. This is the James Beard Foundation. The first year we're doing the awards, and it is you and Charlie Trotter and Rick Bayless. And so right after that, within like about a month or two, I received a call from Charlie, and he was doing a dinner at his restaurant in Chicago. It was one of the early James Beard out-of-house dinners. And he invited 12 chefs to come down for the dinner. It was Norman Van Aken and Emeril Lagasse and Carrie Nahabidin, who were actually going to be at Naha on Saturday with her.
Yes.
and whole group of chefs. And I had such a good time down there. And I thought, gee, I wish I could do that in Milwaukee. And then I thought, well, I have a restaurant, I can do that. So about 6 months later, I invited, I did our first James Beard dinner at Sanford, and I invited Charlie first to come down, and then John Joho and Celeste Sicola and Paul Bartolotta. And that was the first of 12 years of dinners that we did. We're bringing, 5, 6 chefs into Milwaukee each year. And it was all from the inspiration from Charlie from doing that. And over the years too, I mean, he had any time that he brought someone in, like a chef from over from France or a winemaker, whatever, he'd have a dinner at the restaurant, but then the next day he would do a luncheon at Trotter's for local chefs, and he'd always invite me up. And so I went to many, many dinners there. He was a very, very generous man, and someone who really not only put Chicago on the food map, he put the Midwest on the food map. Really going to be very much missed. I mean, it's a tragedy.
Yes, and my personal condolences, and it was really so amazing. This must have been the event that you're referring to. I found this incredible photo of all these chefs, just as you were mentioning, from 1990 on the steps of Charlie Trotter's restaurant, and it was so special too, because several of them have been on Kitchen Chat with Chef.
Well, yeah, I'm sure Rick Tomato and Barbara Tropp, who I know has passed away, but Brian Whitmer, Patrick Clark. There was just an incredible group.
Yes.
Of chefs there.
Oh, what an incredible memory! And I have to ask you this: so, what was one of your favorite dishes that Chef Charlie Trotter would prepare?
Well, I'll tell you, it was a dish that he, we were doing. He invited me down with another chef to do a kind of a cook-off sort of thing in his kitchen. The three of us, we were doing it for. It was for I think Restaurants and Institutions magazine, and it was we each were given like a mystery box, and then we did a little cook-off. And afterwards, after we did that in the afternoon, he invited Angie and I, and it was Raji, who was the other chef there, the three of us to come back for dinner. And he had a dish that he was making a risotto. He'd gotten some fresh truffles in, and had the truffles in the rice jar, and did this risotto, which was very not in keeping with his. He was almost apologizing for it, because he said, I know this is really old school, and it's not normally on my menu. He said, but I had these truffles and the rice was great, and it was one of the most phenomenal dishes.
Wow.
I still remember the taste of that when he made that. It was just fabulous.
What an incredible memory. So you all had mystery boxes then that you had to prepare, and then he did that special meal for you. Oh, that it is really about bringing people into the kitchen and connecting on such an incredible level, just around food and friendship, and also I think you mentioned somewhere on your website, and listeners, I'm going to provide a link, and we're going to talk about his fabulous new cookbook called Good Stock. But it kind of encapsulates this, where you say there's this bind between food that someone cooks and where it comes from. There's this bond. Yes. Well,
completely. Well, that's really the whole crux of the book. It's Good Stock: Life on a Low Simmer, but it's about 3/4 of the book. It's a 430-page book, but 3/4 of the book is memoir, and then there's 80 recipes. And the memoir part, it's my story of coming up and actually starting in 1950, where the book was conceived, which was actually my father's and grandfather's grocery store, which in 1989 became Sanford Restaurant. My grandfather opened it up in 1921. as the grocery store. But not only was the book conceived there, it was actually, I'm pretty sure I was conceived there also, because I lived upstairs above the restaurant for the first 3 years of my life. But the recipes, because everyone always asks me, where do your recipes come from? And the recipes come from the stories, because without the stories, there just aren't the recipes. And something that a lot of people overlook, even sometimes a lot of chefs overlook when they're cooking, is they're looking to, for the next hot dish or the next thing that's coming out, but they don't always look into themselves. And everybody has what I like to call, your taste memories, and they're very distinct just to you. And that's what makes in a chef, that's what makes really distinctive food, because it's not only the technique that you learn from other chefs and the recipes and the craft of it, but it's also looking into yourself, what you have that is distinctive from what anyone else has, and that's your memories. And if you bring that out in your food, whether you're a professional or just a home cook, you're going to have really delicious, great food that people will say, where did this food come from? Because you can taste food that comes from someone's soul.
Wow. And so what would you say is your signature dish that comes from your soul that really reflects your deepest taste memory?
Well, I'd have to say, and it's a variation on my grandfather's spadini. It's something that was my favorite dish growing up, and it was funny. A few years back, I was doing it because I ended up doing it for Christmas a lot of years when I'm with my sister, and when my parents were still alive too, we always make it. But she said, it was probably about 6-7 years back. She said, you finally did it. It's better than Grandpa's. And that's the ultimate compliment. Because I reworked it a little bit, but it's still those basic flavors that just bring you to that comfort zone. And for me, it's always been the spadini.
Interesting. And it's called spadini, is that right? How?
Yeah, it's a Sicilian spadini. The spadini actually is what it means is things on a little skewer. So in Rome, they have the spadini, but it's like breaded mozzarella cheese and with an anchovy vinaigrette. This spadini in Sicily, it's a beef roll-up. It's real thin beef, and then you take breadcrumbs and you mix that with a good Sicilian tomato sauce, and then I put in some pancetta, and depending on what parts of Sicily, and you might find like more of a sweet and sour component, where they'll have raisins and capers, things in it, and then that's skewered with onion and bay leaf in between, so you get a real distinct flavor of the bay leaf. And they're just sautéed in olive oil and then finished off in the oven. And they're absolutely delicious.
This sounds delicious, and I must ask, is there a secret to the Sicilian sauce?
Well, for me, it's like a kind of almost like a quick caramelization of the onions as you're making it. It's just taking your time as you're doing the process, cooking them in olive oil, a lot of garlic, and then cooking the tomato paste out too, to get getting a little color on the tomato paste, so it isn't that bright red. It starts to turn like kind of that vermilion color.
Okay.
Before you add in the tomatoes, but beyond that, I know a lot of Sicilians add sugar to it. I don't.
Okay.
I think when you caramelize the tomato paste, you get that sweetness in it, but usually a lot of times that was to compensate for the when the Sicilians came over to the United States, to compensate for the lack of sweetness in the tomatoes they were getting here. because it's much sunnier in Sicily, so they get a much sweeter tomato met. But nowadays you can get great tomatoes and great paste and everything. So I don't really think there's a need for that anymore.
Exactly.
But I also like to cook some sausage in it. As I mentioned, to have a little pork component in it, and the sausage is great to eat afterwards.
That does sound good. And for those who might not have access to fresh tomatoes and everything, canned, can the home chef substitute canned tomatoes?
Sure. I mean, you get a good San Marzano tomato. That's perfect for it. I mean, a lot of times, unless if you're in prime tomato season, that's the way to go. Unless if you can tomatoes yourself, or you might like freeze some in from the summer months.
Okay.
So the canned tomatoes are perfect substitute.
Great. Well, I'd love to go back to your culinary beginnings here. You were a graduate from the Culinary Institute of America in 1974, and then stayed there for a year of fellowship in the Escoffier room. And this was really quite new. I mean, the whole popularity of Top Chef and everything had not really started quite yet, and you really wowed the French chefs who seem to have a hold on the culinary world. You truly made a big difference in New York. Can you kind of share about what that was like, being one of the only American chefs there?
Well, before I even got down to New York, going to the Culinary Institute at that time, I started the year that they moved from. They were originally on New Haven's campus on Yale's campus in New Haven, and then they moved to Hyde Park in end of 1970, 1971. And starting at the school then, it was quite different than it is today. I mean, it was more of a. I went there the year before it opened, and it was an old Jesuit seminary, which had been abandoned for a lot of years. So it's kind of a ramshackle type place at that time, and they really did a beautiful job of putting it together. But the difference at the school early on at that time was that the majority of chefs that were there, almost all of them, were chefs before they were teachers. They were hired because they were good chefs. And so at times, the teaching aspect was more like working in a outside kitchen atmosphere than actually being in school, because because they weren't teachers, they really were not concerned at times with students that they didn't feel measured up, that were worth wasting their time on. And that was a good and bad thing, because a good part of it was there were a lot of really, really good chefs there that you could learn from. The bad part was they always weren't great teachers, and they didn't dole out their knowledge to everyone. But another thing was that one of the teachers, my first mentor, Peter Von Erp, that was working there, he was kind of what I like to call like a flawed genius. He had he wasn't above going out, and having a few, and then kind of sleeping it off in the car and walking into the school in the morning, and not quite what the typical culinary institute instructor would be today, because the administration necessarily wouldn't put up with that. But he was really a genius at cooking and the knowledge that he had, and it's kind of sad that like today he wouldn't be someone that could be teaching there, because it's just like for example, if you're at Harvard, there's always the professor that doesn't always play by the rules, but the reason he's there is because he's such a great teacher, and he's a genius.
Wow.
And I think sometimes it's better to put up with some of the quirks of someone to gain that knowledge. That's,
Right. And so what do you feel that you mainly gained from working with Chef Peter von Orp? What did he teach you technique-wise or food-wise that really stays with you today?
well, what he taught me at that time was he had a very global perspective, and this was 1971, where any type of ethnic food outside of an actual ethnic restaurant, if it was done by the French, like if they were doing a curry, it was not like really an Indian curry. It was a French curry. It was a French dish where it would be a cream sauce with a little pinch of curry powder in there. The food he was doing at that time was very in keeping with the different cuisines of the world. We were doing dishes from the Middle East, from India, from Thailand, from all all over Europe, all over Asia, and he would have me do extensive research. And at the time, that meant going to the library. There was no internet,
right.
no computers or anything. So I would go down and I'd do research for 3-4 hours on, for example, like you want a cold cucumber soup. I'd find all the different variations of that, and then come back, and then I'd start talking to him about it, and then after I went through all that, then he'd tell me what we were actually doing, because he already knew what we were going to make, but he wanted me to go through the process of finding out about the food, of learning the history of food, because he understood that if you don't know the history of food, you can't really innovate at any time. It's like people saying they're pushing the envelope. If you don't understand the envelope, you can't push the envelope. So anyone, like take for example Grant Atkins, who was doing incredible food at Alinea. I mean, he has a basis of great food knowledge. He didn't just all of a sudden do what he's doing right now. He went through, like his parents' place, cooking with that, and to all, to cooking with Thomas Keller and doing all this classical food. And then he went out because he can do that because he understands where food comes from. And that's important for any chef to do that, because a lot of times now chefs just want to create. They want to do something that nobody's done before. And in order to do that, or in order to understand if you're doing that, you have to understand what everyone has done before you can do that.
Yes, that is so true in all parts of life. That is very, very wise. Yes. And also it must be such a challenge, because you see all of these different techniques and food trends and all of that occurring and into the modern cuisine and kind of less of the fancy French side of things, and you were part of that wave.
Well, right. I mean, what is going on in food today, whereas chefs who don't understand, like a lot of the precepts of, for a better word, molecular gastronomy, kind of have the same feeling that the French chefs had in the early 70s when Nouvelle Cuisine was coming in. I mean, they were, some chefs embraced it. Some chefs were very threatened by it because it was going against the precepts of Escoffier, which they had been cooking with for years and years. And but slowly it becomes everything becomes mainstream because people see where it is, and they learn the different techniques, and then they incorporate them into their food, and then it just becomes another natural part of the growth of food in the world.
Right, and it's all about taste too, no matter what
always.
Technique. Does
always.
It taste
I mean, that's I've always felt that if a dish, you have to, you eat with your eyes, which is true. That's where you start, but you finish with your palate. And I always like to say with my food, if someone doesn't think that they'd like to just throw their silverware away and put their face in the plate and keep eating until it comes up that I've done something wrong. That's the way it should be. There should always be this, I think, this almost primal urge when you're eating that you're transported and you're actually kind of forget for a moment where you are.
Wow.
That you're just right into the food.
And it becomes a taste memory. You're really creating taste memories for the diners and for the home chefs who try your recipes and everything. And listeners, this is what really jumped out at me on his bio page. Chef Sandy, you were one of 12 chefs chosen by Julia Child to cook and prepare for her 80th birthday. Please share about that incredible taste memory.
Well, when we were actually got this phone call, and I had met Julia earlier. She had been to Wisconsin a few times, and she'd come to the restaurant, and the first year that we opened, we had Julia come out. It was in conjunction with the AIWF chapter. I was one of the founders of the chapter there, and so we took her all around the state. And on the way back, there's just a little story about coming back. And this is actually at the book too. But we were flying back. We went to a veal farm, Provini Veal, and they flew us back in their company jet back to the Waukesha County Airport. And as we were flying in, Julia's aide was Gabriel Sayer. She looked out the window of the plane as we were about to land, and she said, "Sandy," said, "come over here." And I looked out the window. She said, "What is that?" And I looked out and I said, "Oh my gosh, it's the Wienermobile. They sent the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile to pick us up." And Gabriel looked and she said, "I don't think so." And she just wasn't too excited about this whole thing. And I was really disappointed because early on when I was a child, the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile used to come around to grocery stores when my dad had the grocery store. I was about 5 years old. And it drove up and the door opened up and at that time they had a fellow called Little Oscar. And he was about 4'5" with a big chef hat. He'd come out and he would come out and give wiener whistles to all the kids and they'd have a tour of the bus. And I was so frightened when he jumped out and he started walking in the store that I ran in the back. And I never got to go on the Wienermobile.
Oh no.
So I was really disappointed that, so now I'm going to miss it again. And Julia looks out the window and she says, "Well, I think I'd like to go on that Wiener bus." And it was like, "Julia, where have you been all my life?" So transpired, as surreal a situation as I've ever been in. We're driving down I-94 in the Wienermobile with Julia Child, blowing our wiener whistles as the Oscar Mayer theme song is going out on the inside and outside of the Wienermobile, and cars are beeping as they pass and waving. So we pull up to the Pfister Hotel, and they have the DeLorean style flip up door, and the Wienermobile opens, and this whole Wiener curious crowd is already gathered because it's the Wienermobile, and out strides Julia Child. Obviously the tallest chef ever to walk out of the Wienermobile. Yeah, it was just what an experience.
What an incredible! I still cannot get the picture out of my mind of Julia Child and you in the Wienermobile.
I have a great picture of that, of her blowing her wiener whistle. It's just wonderful.
I love that, and that's so funny because last week I was over in Kraft Kitchens at Kraft here in the Chicago suburbs, and I saw the Wienermobile parked right in front of their corporate headquarters. So
and that's it's such an icon. And talk about two icons getting together.
Amazing. And you being the third icon, so there were three icons, you, Julia Child, and the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile. What a moment. What a moment. Well, I have to ask, what did you cook for Julia Child?
Well, for her dinner, we did at her 80th birthday.
Yeah,
for the appetizer, I did the pear and Roquefort tart with walnuts. That's it's been a signature dish on Sanford ever since we opened. Oh. And then for what I did, the 12 chefs, we were all broken up into different courses. And so there were three of us doing the dessert. It was Marcel Desaulniers from the Death by Chocolate fame, and George Killian and George Germain and Joanne Killian from Al Forno out in Providence. And they were doing their tiramisu, and I did our signature ginger snap cannoli, which is, once again, it was on the menu at Sanford since we opened. And it was for, the dinner was for 650 of our closest friends. So it was quite a huge event at the Capitol Plaza. And we also, the Boston Pops Orchestra was playing for it. And they were, instead of using instruments, they used all kitchen utensils to play on.
What? And was Arthur Fiedler directing? Or?
Well, early on during the day, they were going around through the kitchens and picking up, pots and pans and covers and whisks and all different things. And I heard them practicing when they were starting out during the day. And it sounded, I thought, oh, this might sound a little cheesy. And that night, it was brilliant and that's why they're musicians.
Yeah.
The sound that they got out of that, and as we brought out our plates, we went out to all the chefs. As you brought out your plates, you went out to the table where Julia was with, and she was with all the PBS people. It was being filmed for a PBS special, salute to the chef, Julia Child's 80th birthday, and they were all asking. They said, "Oh, so it must be, like all this tension and craziness back in the kitchen," and we said, I mentioned. They said, "Well, no." I said, "It's actually like Mr. Rogers' kitchen back there," which was a little PBS reference, and because he was there at the table, Mr. Rogers.
Oh.
It was just a wonderful time. And the cannoli recipe is actually in the book, along with the pear and Roquefort tart.
Wonderful. And listeners, I'm going to provide a link to this wonderful new book called Good Stock, and just with these great recipes, and also to his website, goodstockfarm.com. And I do want to talk about your farm as well, but I have to, while we're talking about icons, I also would love to ask you about what you cooked for the Dalai Lama.
Well, when I was asked about doing the dinner, of course I was thrilled to be doing it. And it was a dinner up in Madison at the Madison Club, and so I assumed that it would be vegetarian because I thought, well, there's a monk and it's a Dalai Lama, and the person who set it up, and he said, well, actually no. He said the monks can eat anything as long as it's not killed specifically for them. So, which is kind of a nice disclaimer.
Yes.
Which pretty much opens you up to eating anything. And he said the only restrictions they had was that he eats between. He has a short window between. I think it's 11 and 1 o'clock. Something. That's when they eat, and they eat for the whole day. So the lunch was scheduled for that, for that time period. So I cooked something from. I was wanting to do something from Wisconsin, so I did Strauss veal. It was a slow cooked Strauss veal loin with rhubarb and morels.
Wow.
And when the Dalai Lama, we were told that when he came, we had a couple kind of protocol things that you don't speak to him unless he speaks to you. As he's coming, you never turn your back on him. So you would back away if he's coming. We were waiting for him to come, and they didn't tell us what time he was coming for security. And the kitchen was downstairs, and we were serving upstairs in the dining room. So we were all set up upstairs, and I was going downstairs to get something. We had been waiting, and it was about 12:30. We'd been waiting upstairs for about an hour, and still not knowing what time he was coming. So as I'm walking downstairs, all of a sudden, this entourage with the Dalai Lama starts coming up the stairs. And so I was going to say something, but I thought, I can't say anything. So I just kind of, put my hand up like in a little wave. And then I realized I couldn't turn around and go back up the stairs. So I'm like moonwalking back up the stairs to get out of the stairwell so they could pass. So then I got behind the booth, and they told us when he came, they said he might stop for a picture, but we don't really know. So as soon as he came around the corner and we were all behind the tables where we were set up to do the food, he comes around the corner and he says, "Oh, the chefs! So you guys want a picture?" And he comes walking behind and gets between us, and he's right next to me. He grabs my hand. He says, "So what's for lunch?" And I said, "Well, we're doing veal." And he said, "I love veal." Then he just started giggling almost like a kid. He was such an infectious, warm person. And so then we had the dinner, and he just, I'll tell you, in that he ate for that 45 minutes, and he just chowed. Because we had brought bread from our bakery. He went through almost a loaf of bread. And he ate every single thing on his plate. I mean, he just cleaned his plate. So he was getting ready for that, that fasting after the big meal. But he got his big meal in.
That is amazing, and just truly another taste memory that you have created for the Dalai Lama. And what fun, and truly compliments to the chef as well. He ate every bite. That is terrific. I love that. And what I'm excited about, too, listeners, is you can get these wonderful experience and memoirs and recipes from Chef Sandy in his new book called Good Stock. And also, coming up next year in 2014, I understand that you have this wonderful new farm, Good Stock Farm, and that's the website, listeners, goodstockfarm.com, where you are inviting people into your kitchen for cooking classes, and I cannot wait to sign up and learn how to cook with you, Chef Sandy.
Yeah, we've taken we had a small house in Hatfield. We're on a little under 2 acres right on the Connecticut River, and Hatfield is in that kind of that 5-college area between Northampton and Amherst. So there's Amherst and UMass and Smith College and Holyoke and Hampshire, and it's in the Pioneer Valley, which is really the breadbasket of Massachusetts. It's farmland with the colleges all around, kind of similar to like Dane County where Madison is situated.
Yeah.
And so we built onto the back of we built a addition on our house, which is actually it's our home, and it's going to be our cooking school, and it's we're calling it Good Stock Farm, and it goes along with the cookbook. It's Good Stock Cookbook, and we will be starting cooking classes probably like next summer. Just small, hands-on, and we started planting the farm, our backland about 4 years ago. So we got all our fruit trees in. We have 16 fruit trees, and then we planted all the things that take a while to come around, like rhubarb, asparagus, horseradish, berries, and then we're planting our yearly crops as we go along. Like we have 200 head of garlic of 5-6 different varieties in the ground right now for next year, and So we'll be able to go out and in season we'll be able to either pick out of our garden to use the things for the cooking classes, or just go right through the Pioneer Valley, which pretty much feeds all of Massachusetts. That's where a lot of produce comes from, and we have lamb out there, lamb and pork and all the different farmers out there.
Yes.
And then we have all the fish and seafood from the coast. So
it truly is a farm to table concept
that
you are
completely.
offering. Yes, this just is wonderful, and featuring your wonderful recipes from Good Stock. And I also read somewhere that you have like 1,000 recipes repertoire. I mean, how in the world do you remember all these things? Does it just come so naturally to you? You don't even have to reference a recipe. It's ingrained in your mind.
No, well, some things. It's interesting if I don't have a recipe with me and I write it down, it's usually within 1 or 2 ounces of the recipe.
Wow.
But I still reference back with that many recipes, because I've been doing a column for the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel for 13 years, called The Kitchen Technician, and that's really where the seed of the book came about, from the years of writing for the paper. And
great. And that still is a column, then, The Kitchen Technician. I love that.
Yes.
I love that.
Yeah, it's on JS Online. It's on every. I do it every Sunday.
Great. Oh, and so do you have a column? What's the topic of the column for this Sunday?
The topic for the column for this Sunday, I don't know, because I'm 4 weeks ahead.
Oh,
so
wow!
I have to remember back what I wrote for this week.
That's fine.
We're coming up on
the holidays. With the holidays and Christmas approaching, do you have any special columns that will with tips?
Oh, you know what it is. It's for Thanksgiving stuffing. It's a wild rice stuffing recipe.
Oh.
For coming up for Thanksgiving. I'm pretty sure that's the one that it's with yellow turnips and beets, and a lot of root vegetables in it. I'm pretty sure that's the one that's coming up.
And do you ever have an Italian twist on Thanksgiving? Do you any special desserts for Thanksgiving that you prepare?
Oh well, this year we're doing. I do these little, and this is actually coming up in a column too. Doing these stuffed marzipan stuffed pears with almond coating. Then we put there's marzipan inside of them, but then there's a little bit spread on the outside, and then the almonds are put on that, and then they're baked. So it's like you poach the pears first and then bake them off, and they're really delicious. It's kind of like a fig and marzipan a filling with them.
Oh, that sounds fabulous. And listeners, I'm going to make sure that we provide a lot of online links for you. We'll have goodstockfarm.com, his website, and also, Chef Sandy, you had mentioned, and you were just so gracious that the listeners can even order a book online, and that you would personally inscribe it.
Oh yes, yeah. They on our website. That's a goodstockfarm.com. You can sign up for a book there and just let me know how you'd like it inscribed, and we'll send it out to you.
Well, I think those make wonderful holiday gifts, so listeners definitely keep that in mind. And, Chef Sandy, this has been such a delightful kitchen chat. I will forever remember the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile with you and Julia Childs.
Thank you, Margaret.
What a delight, and thank you so much. So listeners, I'll make sure I put all the links you're eager to see, and I've already signed up for his wonderful newsletter on goodstockfarm.com as well. So
and also, if I may want to mention that we're going to be in Chicago at NAHA on Saturday.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, it is.
There with yes at Naha, which is going to be so much fun. So I'll make sure I put a link to that too, listeners. And thank you so much, Chef Sandy. This has just been delightful.
Oh, thank you, Margaret. It's a pleasure.
Well, listeners, we are moving from Chef Sandy and the exciting tales of the Dalai Lama, Charlie Trotter, and Julia Child, and we are now going to visit over a cup of tea. And I can't wait to introduce you to our next guest, Teresa Griffin, who is a master of tea. And I am so excited to learn about what really makes a great cup of tea. And so, Teresa, welcome to Kitchen Chat.
Hello, Margaret, and thank you for having me. So I'm glad to speak to you about tea.
Oh, this is just going to be so relaxing, too. And actually, as we are talking, I am sipping some of your tea, the delicious green tea. It was, I know I am not pronouncing it correctly, so please forgive me. It's Bai Luo Chun.
So Bilu Chun.
Bilu Chun. Sorry about
Bilu
that.
Chun.
And Emerald Spring Snail.
Emerald Spring Snail, that's right. That's what it translates to. There's a legend to that, supposedly, that, in ancient times, that the pluckers were plucking the teas, and one of them ran out of room to put the leaves, so she stuffed them in her blouse. And with the heat, her body heat, it started to warp the leaves a little bit and produce this beautiful smell. And one day an emperor was coming through, and he tasted the tea and just loved it, and it became known as Emerald Spring Snails.
Emerald Spring Snails.
Because of the shape of the leaves. Mm-hmm.
Yes, and I was admiring those because, it is all loose tea, and and it is beautiful. I mean, and I'm not a tea connoisseur, so I love going to an afternoon tea. That's one of my favorite things to do. But I've never really taken the time to learn about tea or order something beyond the typical Earl Grey tea variety.
Earl Grey is beautiful too. That's why it's a classic tea. But there's such a range of beautiful and different teas, and that's one of the things we like to do. Is we're a source for premium, handcrafted, and artisan teas, and we encourage people to discover our world of tea.
Yes, and I'm going to provide a link, listeners. It's napoleonatea.com, and I'll make sure I provide a link with the podcast so people can check out your beautiful website and all all the great information there, but also the wonderful products and gift ideas and everything that you have. But if you can kind of help us get a 411 on tea and basically. And tea leaves. So I assume that the tea leaves are from a tree, and where do they come from?
Well, most of the tea that we consume comes from the Camellia sinensis plant, and there are just a lot of varietals of that, and it depends on how the tea is processed. That gives us the white, the greens, the blacks, the oolongs, and the pu'er teas. So, the white teas, they're barely processed at all. They're pretty much plucked and left to dry. And then the green teas, they're plucked. They go through firing or pan firing or steaming, which the Japanese do to give it, that vibrant green color. So it all depends on how the tea is processed. That gives us the different types of tea that we enjoy.
And does it also make a difference in terms of the soil where it is grown?
Oh, sure.
The different taste kind of evolve from that.
Right, and the terroir. Sort of like wine and chocolate and stuff. It's all of the terroir, the artisans, how they make the tea. It all, really depends. And it gives us these beautiful products.
Yes, and how did you become a tea master? I mean, and how many tea masters are there? I've not really heard. You always hear about the master chefs or whatever, but not the tea master.
I'm not quite sure how many tea masters there are exactly, but I, learned about tea and studied here in the U.S. I went to China, London, Sri Lanka, and along the way just met a lot of knowledgeable people on the subject, but I wanted to study with a master. So it was at the Institute of Masters of Tea Arts in Canada that, I had the opportunity. And I studied under Master Bill Lee. It was very challenging, but it raised my consciousness and appreciation of tea. And I learned to value tea drinking cultures, but most importantly to savor tea and enjoy it for the simplicity and not necessarily as a connoisseur's art or merely a commodity. So having that kind of training and starting a business, it just heightened the journey. So, yeah.
Yes, and I love your tagline on the website, discover, taste, and appreciate.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah. We, when I first started, I came across tea, a few years ago online, browsing online, and I probably spent about 6 hours that evening reading anything and everything I could about tea. The following summer, I went to an expo and was just bowled over. So I wanted to share that experience. So at Napoleana Tea, we do have that tagline of discover, taste, appreciate, where we want people to know beautiful teas, to pique their curiosity to taste them, and hopefully learn more about them, which brings about appreciation.
Yes.
So,
yes, and in the discovery side of things, and you actually travel around the world and go into remote tea growing areas in Asia to focus on small and single estate tea growers. Why is it so important that these small villages, what role they play in developing the best premium teas?
Well, we want to give our customers a glimpse into and understand the origin and passion that's put behind the making of these teas. I mean, some of them are backed by generations and hundreds of years of traditions. And by us being able to help bring these teas to a larger audience, we can help these villages preserve that craft. And in return, we can continue to enjoy and explore, artisan teas, which is what our goal is.
Right. And so what has been one of your most interesting trips to these village?
There's a lot of, interesting, memorable moments. I remember one time it was like 5:30 in the morning. We were getting ready to go to plantation. And I woke up to, it sounded like chanting, and I opened my window. We were in Sri Lanka at the time. And just there was a monastery up in the mountains, and their chants were just flowing down the valley, and it was just the most amazing experience. So there's just a lot of, just amazing experience. Tea, and, actually one thing we want to do is to, in some ways, share that experience as well. So next year we are offering our first tea safari to Kenya. And it'll be Napoleana Tea Company's Red Carpet Tour. It's being presented by Royalty of Kenya, which will be an amazing trip where participants will not only visit tea plantations, but meet the farmers, share a meal with them, and see how they make their teas. So we also offer various classes and workshops for private individuals and groups. And we'll be posting more information on our website. They can check that out at www.napoleanatea.com or email us info@napoleanatea.
And that sounds fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
Quite honestly, I never have associated Kenya with tea.
Yeah.
Kenya and tea. And how does the taste of African tea from Kenya, compare to that of tea in these remote Asian villages?
Wow, that's a kind of a hard thing to say. It's funny, the more you taste tea, you begin to recognize certain characters. You can tell a Darjeeling that it's a Darjeeling tea. You can take a sniff of something and say, oh, wow, this looks like it's from Africa and, China. There's just really such a range of just different teas that are beautiful. And one way to do that is, to hone your palate by trying different teas. Speaking of which, we do offer tea collections this year for the holidays, and they contain a trio of the same type of tea. They're great for tastings with friends, to see what to pair best with certain foods, or just to pick out, your favorite tea. Speaking of Africa and Kenya, we're also launching a holiday duo where it's a combination red rooibos from South Africa and a select green tea from either China, Japan, or India.
And
so
that's a perfect color combination with the green and red. But I have a question, because once again, I'm not a tea master by any means.
No, not at all.
What exactly is red rooibos? Am I saying it correctly?
Rooibos.
What is red rooibos?
Rooibos is an herb, actually. It does not contain tea. It's not a tea plant. Okay. And it's something that is indigenous to South Africa, the Cederberg Mountains area, actually. And it's been consumed by the indigenous tribe over there for like hundreds and hundreds of years. And rooibos is, reputed to be very beneficial as far as, health-enhancing properties.
Wow. And there are other benefits to tea as well. I mean, I'm hearing so much these days about the health benefits of tea. And are there differences across the colors of tea? I know I hear a lot about green tea, and I'm enjoying this delicious cup of your also known as Emerald Spring Snail green tea. And listeners, you'll appreciate this. I usually have tea bags, so I was searching, trying to find a little, and what is it called, the little tea strainer. And I found one from years ago, a little Mickey Mouse ear tea strainer.
Oh, my goodness, how funny.
With the thought of my daughters were kids, so.
Whatever works.
So if you could envision, I have a little Mickey Mouse tea strainer with this exotic tea. That is great.
Works, absolutely. Serviceware, they are a part of the enjoyment of tea, especially loose leaf teas. And, we do offer a selection of teaware, infusers, scoops. And for those without a programmable kettle, we have temperature gauges as well. So those do come in handy.
Definitely. And so what is your best recommendation in terms of preparing the tea? Do you typically use the tea kettle, or do you can you use that water cooler that has the heated element for hot water on it?
Sure. Everybody enjoys their tea differently, and, different countries, regions, cultures, everybody has their own preferences. However, there are 3 things to consider to make your best cup: your tea, your water temperature, and your steeping time. So at Napoleona Tea Company, we taste all of our teas, and we post preparation guidelines for the quantity, temperature, and steeping time. You'll find it on our site and the back of each packaging. So after that, these are guidelines. So once you prepare it, if it's a new tea you're not familiar with, then we encourage you to prepare it the way that suits your, palate best next time.
Great. And definitely we're going to have the link, listeners, so you can check out all of these wonderful products and teas and everything. Back to the health benefits of tea.
Yes.
We can chat a little bit about that. Sure. So is green tea like the ultimate health tea, or are there other varieties that serve different purposes? And what are the health benefits?
Well, there studies show that different types of teas have health-enhancing benefits, and depending on the situation, certain teas may be more effective than others. For example, pu'er tea is reputed to aid with lowering cholesterol. With the holidays come all the wonderful meals and comfort foods. Have a cup of rooibos. It makes for an excellent digestive. Again, herbals are very calming and generally caffeine-free. And sometimes for the holidays, that's important. We have this chamomile and lavender, Egyptian chamomile. It's just beautiful. And French lavender, you open the bag and the aroma alone transports. So there's ample research available about the health benefits of tea to aid with digestion, circulation, reduction in blood pressure, etc.
Wonderful. And then, as you were saying, the relaxation and being able to sleep. I'm going to check into that lavender too for the nights of insomnia. Now, please tell us a little bit about how you chose the name Napoleana tea, and what does it mean?
That's kind of funny. I get asked that a lot. Margaret, I'm a bit of a history buff, and there are certain historical figures that for one reason or another I just find fascinating and memorable. And Napoleon is one of them. I've always liked the name, but I wanted to soften it. So I added an A at the end and made it Napoleana. I just find a certain grace and old worldish quality images of new lands. I just wanted to evoke that on our site and with our products. When you think, tea dates back to almost 5,000 years, and it's played a role in the history of many countries. Someone once said that if you want to know history, just follow tea. So it's consumed on every continent, and to the degree that it is the second most consumed beverage in the world after water.
That is amazing. And I'm just curious, was Napoleon a tea drinker?
That's so funny. I'm sure he was. I would like to think that he most definitely was.
Yes, to get that fortification for.
I'll have to check on that.
Yeah, that sounds like fun. And also, are there any countries that really aren't able to grow tea? In the United States, are there places that grow tea here in the States?
Well, actually, they are beginning here in the I believe around Oregon. I'm pretty sure there's a place there where they are now developing, or probably have at this point developed, an oolong tea. Hawaii just last year, I believe, had their first harvest of teas. Tea is grown it's got to be over 55 countries now. Wow. And so it's just really spread all over, and it's just amazing what they're coming up with.
And are there hybrids? I'm sorry, I'm just still trying to understand what a tea tree or tea bush looks like. Yeah. They're all basically the same, but they have different tastes depending on where they grow, or are there different varieties, or how does that work?
There's different varietals and cultivars. In some areas, you'll find tea trees that actually grow to over 40 feet tall, and they've been around for hundreds of years. In some places, they keep the tea bushes trimmed, particularly in Japan, where everything is done by machinery. Mostly everything is done by machinery, and so they keep the bushes low, the table, I should say, pretty low, so it'll be easy to pluck. But some leaves are bigger than others, and some are just more hardier and take to real cold, frosty weather. Some like the humid climates. So, and again, all of this affects the flavor of the finished product, the tea.
Wow! And is it like a perennial type of thing where you're talking about harvesting or plucking the leaves? Yeah. Is it kind of like just you use each leaf, or there is only certain ones you pick?
It depends. Like if you go to a tea factory, there's a plucking order, and depending on what kind of tea they're making, it might just be the bud. And those are usually the most expensive teas, where you talk like Silver Needle, Ceylon Tips, where it's just that tender little bud that they're plucking. And it takes thousands and thousands of these to just make a pound of tea. It all depends on what kind of tea is being made, and that's how they pluck their teas.
Oh, this is fascinating. And I'm also reading these days about tea tree oil. Is that related to the tea tree, or is it a separate thing?
No, you know what, I'm not 100% sure as far as the tea oil, but I am pretty sure they extract it from tea bushes, tea trees, or the leaves. Yeah, tea is really such a versatile product. It's used as a beverage for cooking, cosmetics, pharmaceuticals, and the Specialty Tea Institute announced that over half of Americans now consume or drink tea at least once a day, and this is a great opportunity for us because we're always looking and evolving and exploring new different types of teas to bring to the U.S. and our customers. So we have a lot of new teas coming towards the end of the month, more floral, roasted and aged oolongs, green teas from India, more from Africa, and of course China's best. So,
Great. And what is an oolong? Because I always see these on the the afternoon tea menu or whatever. And what are the distinguishing differences between a Darjeeling and an oolong and that type of thing?
Sure. Darjeeling is a location. It's a region. That's where a particular type of tea comes from. It's a black tea. An oolong is, it's one of actually the most difficult teas to make. It's very labor intensive, I should say. It requires a lot of rolling and resting of the leaf and rolling, and all of that roasting. All of that just enhances the flavor of the tea. So, and it can also go through multiple steeping times and infusions. So we're looking forward to our new batches of oolong teas that'll be coming. The trend is towards more lighter and floral right now, but I tell you, there are some that are just deeply roasted, heavily roasted, and are complex and just so beautiful.
Right. And and you'd mentioned the floral and the combination, like hibiscus. Is that an ingredient? Some people
No, actually, a lot of these teas that are just pure tea, it's amazing how flavorful they really are without any additives, without any scenting. On their own, right? A lot of it, again, is the terroir. It picks up from what's around it, whether there happens to be like a little citrus tree there and, the scent or what of that blends with the leaves, and before you know it, you have just this gorgeous tea.
Oh, that is so exciting. And you can get these gorgeous teas from your wonderful website, napoleonatea.com. And listeners, I'll definitely send a link. And I just am so excited to try the green and red combination for the Christmas holiday.
With the holiday duo, absolutely.
Yes, that's going to be great.
We offer a cost-effective way for our customers to purchase our products, again, on our website, and we do ship on regular business days, Mondays through Fridays, in the U.S. The holiday duos range from $19. The tea collections, which there are three: the winter white, the festive red, and the holiday green, and they range from $11 to like $14.95. So most in-stock items will go out within 24 hours. With the holidays, though, we ask for a little more time. It's closer to 48 hours.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I think they make wonderful hostess gifts, and so it's just a wonderful kind of unique gift to give during the holiday seasons, and a gift to yourself to go have a cup of tea.
Right, and we invite people to also visit us at the Cornucopia Gift Fair in Evanston, so they can actually see these products and the different teas in person, touch them, smell them. We'll be there on November 22nd through the 24th, and it's sponsored by the Women's Club of Evanston. And we'll also be at the International Holiday Festival at the Kenosha Public Museum on Saturday, December 7, 2013.
Terrific. And those are all on your website, so the listeners can click on for more information. So and they'll be able to meet you in person then. Is that right?
Absolutely.
Right. And you can ask the questions you've always wanted to ask to the tea master. Oh,
sure.
I'm just
talk tea.
And do you have a favorite tea that really has just become a part of who you are, through the years as a tea master, that you fully appreciate the nuances of the tea?
That's funny. I get asked that a lot. I would say I lean more towards just the plain, unflavored, unscented teas. However, I appreciate so many different kinds, and all of our teas, we taste and we cup them, and before we put them online, and we prepare them different ways to figure out the best way that we like it, and those are the ones we choose to sell.
Okay, and then going back to something you just said, and I don't know if that is like a tea term. When you said you cup the tea, does that mean you just put it in the cup and infuse it, or what does that mean?
Well, cupping, cupping is a professional way to ensure the quality of the teas, and again, we do this for each and every tea prior to and after purchase or import. Tastings are a great way for customers to sample a flight or a variety of, say, the three green teas. Particularly with friends. That's awesome, actually.
Yeah.
And discover something new, which ones you might like or want to pair with a certain food. So the tea collections would be handy for this because they contain a trio of the same type of tea.
Great, that have already been tested. So this is I am just so grateful for the time you've spent with us today on Kitchen Chat. I've learned so much about the world of tea and truly appreciate learning about the different varieties and the characteristics, and look forward to visiting your website, which is napoleonatea.com. And listeners, I will provide a link. And this is so fitting, Teresa. First of all, thank you so much for being on Kitchen Chat. And I always end each segment and podcast of Kitchen Chat by encouraging the listeners to sit down and savor the day. So when I say that today, first of all, thank you very much for being on the show. And I also want to encourage listeners, this is a perfect time of year to grab a cup of tea and sample a new flavor, and and to take the time during your busy day to just sit down and savor the day.
Thank you for joining us today. If you're interested in Margaret's books, A Mother's Heart Knows, Pearl Girls Encountering Grit, Experiencing Grace, and Go Back and Be Happy, please just click on the covers on the webtalkradio.net page in front of you. Margaret would love to connect with you and hear from you, so join her on Twitter, Facebook, her blog, or click on this website to leave a note and share a recipe. Thank you again, and we'll see you here again for a new show next week.